integrative medical science as a special postdoctoral researcher. So his presentation title is Reconstruction of the relaxational line shape of liquid water based on the ultrabroadband dielectric spectroscopy. If you are okay, please start.
I'm Keichiro Shiraga from Nippon. Today, first of all, I would like to appreciate the organizers to give me the opportunity to talk in this symposium. And today, I would like to talk about my recent work about ultrabroadband dielectric spectroscopy, which provided me a deeper insight into terahertz spectroscopy. Water is sometimes compared as a matrix of life, and as you may know, the understanding of the intercellular water is far from completed because it is very complicated. In order to overcome this situation, we are trying to investigate the intracellular water using a terahertz ATL spectroscopy of the culture cells, because the terahertz waves are very sensitive to water, and also the penetration depth of the evanescent field is comparable to the thickness of the cells. So we can sensitively measure the intracellular water in this measurement. And this is the terahertz spectrum of water and the living cells. This is the imaginary part of the dielectric constant. And as you can see, the spectrum is very broad and featureless, and no distinctive peaks can be found. So the spectrum decomposition analysis is necessary in this case to reveal the water dynamics, such as the hydration state and the hydrogen bonding structure. So our conclusion is significantly dependent on the model, so the optimization of the used model is a very important thing. Apart from the cells, this figure shows the literature values of liquid water from the gigahertz region to the mid-infrared region, measured by different groups. Most prominent feature here is a very large absorption around 20 gigahertz. This is assigned to the collective reorientation mode of water. And historically, the microwave researchers has used the Debye function to fit this experimental result. And the terahertz researchers have followed this tradition. On the other hand, for vibration microscopy in the infrared region, they doesn't care about this relaxation mode because this is just the absorption baseline. So microwave researchers believes the Debye relaxation model is correct, but in the terahertz region and the infrared region, the validity of the Debye model has not been examined so far. Then let me review the theoretical part of the Debye relaxation model. Let's consider a molecule with the permanent dipole moment of mu is rotating with the angular velocity of omega, and it is placed in the environment with the moment of inertia and friction and random force here. In this case, the Langevin equation for the rotating dipoles can be given by this equation, and if the inertial effect is negligible and random force can be expressed with the delta function, we can obtain the time revolution function like this. This is, as you can see, this is a single exponential function with the time constant of tau, and this means the angular velocity of omega is always constant at any time. And if this time domain result is fully transformed into the frequency region, we can obtain the real part and imaginary part of the spectrum. And this imaginary part shows peak at omega equal inverse tau, and its absorption spectrum is completely symmetric. But realistically speaking, the inertial effect and random force effect cannot be negligible in a real case. So these assumptions may be inappropriate. So if we do consider the inertial effect, the rotation velocity at short time should not be constant, because inertial effect expresses resistance to the rotational dynamics. So the reluctant rotation by inertia can be present here, and according to this, the single exponential function is distributed in this region. Then, after a sufficient of time, when the inertial effect is vanished, this time evolution function becomes completely exponential. And in the frequency domain, this reluctant rotation is manifested at high frequencies because it is very short time scales. So in the case of the Debye model, it is a question at high frequencies around this frequency region. And in order to examine, and in order to clarify this point, we performed ultrabroadband spectroscopy, and finally we could obtain the continuous dielectric spectrum from the microwave to the near-infrared region over the 6 decades of frequencies. And this is the experimental result, and it should be emphasized that this is the first experimental result to obtain the full spectrum without any gaps of liquid water of H2O and D2 at 300K. And of course, this experimental result is consistent with the number of literatures independently published by different groups. But the most important thing is we measured the same water sample at the same temperatures, and the full spectrum without any gaps was obtained in this study. Then, in the infrared region, a substantial HD substitution effect can be actually observed because in this region, the hydrogen atom dynamics can be observed. But in the microwave and terahertz region, where the oxygen atom and the whole part of the water molecules is vibrating and rotating, the little and relatively small isotopic effect was confirmed. And now we have ultra-broadband spectrum data, and now we are ready to compare with the Debye relaxation model. And as anticipated, the Debye relaxation model is perfectly consistent with the experimental result in the microwave region. But if the result is extended to higher frequencies, the Debye prediction exceeds the actual experimental result here. And this means obviously, the Debye prediction is overestimated at high frequencies. This is as predicted by the inertial effect. So a new model is necessary dealing with the inertial effect to fit this kind of experimental data in the high frequencies. And in order to consider the inertial effect, we had the benefit of the Kubo's stochastic line-shaped theory, which was developed by 50 years ago. In this theory, we assumed the rotating dipole is subject to a fluctuating environment, which is characterized by the shaking force of delta omega and frictional force of gamma. Then we further assume this shaking force takes 2 discrete values like this, with equal probabilities, and the shaking force fluctuations can be illustrated like this. This is referred to as a 2-state Markov-Chain process. And more importantly, in this theory, according to the principle of equipartition of energy, we can associate the shaking force with the moment of inertia by this equation. So we can actually consider the effect of our moment of inertia in this theory. Then this is the time revolution function of the radiation dynamics. Can be given like this. And in this presentation, let me call this is stochastic frequency modulation model, SFM model. But this is nothing but the Kubo's stochastic line-shaped theory. Then, if you more carefully look at this SFM model relaxation formula, this time domain function is dependent on this eta. And this eta is a function of omega delta over gamma. Then let me introduce a new parameter, which is the correlation factor of alpha, which is equal to this fraction. Then, if we assume this alpha is approaching to 0, meaning the negligible correlation with the environment, this time evolution function becomes completely single exponential. And in the frequency domain, it is a symmetric structure like this. So this is nothing but Debye model. So this means our SF SFM model includes the Debye model as a special cases, one of the special cases. Then, if we consider the non-zero alpha, means a non-negligible correlation with the environment, the time domain function can be like this. As the alpha increases, meaning the correlation with the environment is increased, the inertial behavior can be observed, but at long times, the exponential decay is also observed. Then, and if it is fully transformed into the frequency region, we can see a very sharp drop at high frequencies, which is proportional to the inverse cubic of omega. This means the inertial effect contributes to the faster decay at high frequencies. And this is the comparison between the ultrabroadband experimental spectrum with the Debye function and my stochastic frequency modulation relaxation model. And my experimental result shows this SFM relaxation gives the very small correlation with the environment. This is alpha equal to 0.05. And as you can see from this figure, it is evident that SFM relaxation is perfectly coincide with the experimental result because it is sharply decreases at the high frequencies. But the Debye relaxation is like this. Then, if we also calculate the ratio of the SFM model and the Debye model, the obtained result is like this. The vertical value of 1 equals to completely Debye-like behavior, but it starts to deviate around 1 terahertz, and 50% of differences were identified around 6 terahertz, and it does monotonously decreases like this. And this means SFM relaxation starts to deviate from the Debye behavior at 1 terahertz. So this means the terahertz spectroscopy must be analyzed with the SFM relaxation, and the Debye relaxation is also is already a collapse in the terahertz region. And if we transform into the time domain result, the figure becomes like this. And as you can see, the Debye relaxation is completely exponential like this, but the SFM relaxation shows the slightly inertial behavior at very short time scales because of the very small correlation with the environment. Then in our fitting, we identified the gamma, this is the friction forces of the environment, to be 6.5 terahertz. And this gamma value can be associated with the persistence time of the correlation. Then from this result, we identified the persistence of time of the environment is about 25 femtoseconds. And more specifically, in the Debye model, at t equals 0, the dipoles almost perfectly aligned in the same way, in the same direction, but in the SFM model, they are not perfect because of the inertial effect. Then, around the persistence time, the inertial effect almost going away, and at sufficient times later, the Debye-like behavior and the SFM behavior becomes almost the same. That's why the long-time behavior is almost equal. And to me, this persistence time of 25 femtoseconds may be surprisingly short because hydrogen bonding dynamics are usually the picosecond or sub-picosecond time scales. But according to ultrafast spectroscopy published more than 10 years ago, it says the OH stretching frequency is fluctuating at very, very short time scales, and its result is understood as ultra-short structure correlation of liquid water is existing at very short time scales. So I guess this kind of ultra-short structure correlation may be related with the persistence time, very, very short persistence time, but it should be examined, and more experimental results may be necessary to discuss this point. Then finally, let me conclude this presentation. Originally, I am very interested in interstellar water. So I believe terahertz spectroscopy has the potential to examine interstellar water. But to do so, we have to optimize the spectrum analysis model. So we carried out the ultrabroadband spectroscopy over the microwave to the near-infrared region at the fixed temperature, and we found that water relaxation at 20 gigahertz should be revisited. And the debye relaxation is not appropriate, but stochastic frequency modulation model gives more accurate and appropriate result. And what is important here is that in the terahertz region, we can find some intermolecular bands. And in the terahertz region, the relaxation modes and the intermolecular bands are overlapping with each other. So if we know the appropriate relaxation modes, we can also extract the accurate intermolecular bands. So according to this relaxation mode, we can know a better understanding about terahertz spectroscopy, and we can know a more accurate hydration state and hydrogen bonding structure. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. So do you have any question?
So I'm going to propose a really difficult. Okay. So I'm going to propose a really difficult experiment that I don't expect you to do. But if you consider doing terahertz pump infrared probe, for instance.
From.
Yeah, which is hard, I know. So I don't actually expect you to do it. But if you did, it would be really cool.
Yes. If we can, I would like to try.
Yeah, Cavalieri's done it on some solid state systems. Not this. This is probably harder. But if you could, I would be all for it. You might be able to try it in an FEL, maybe?
FEL?
Yeah, free electron laser, like SACLA.
Yes, in Japan we have some devices for FEL, but my interest in terahertz spectroscopy. So spectroscopy needs very broadband spectrum is necessary because the water spectrum is very broad. So not only FEL combination with other.
Yeah, it's not an easy experiment. I was just thought it'd be cool if you could do it somehow. But I understand.
Any other question?
Is there any visible models that can explain the very fast inertia effect, only 25 femtoseconds? What is the origin of this inertia?
At this moment, it's hard to imagine what is the origin of this, but I expect the ultra-short structure correlation that can be observed by the ultra-fast spectroscopy may be responsible for this result. But now I am trying to measure the temperature-dependent data of liquid water. The same spectrum will be obtained at various temperatures. So such temperature-dependent measurement will give us more deeper insight into this persistence time result.
Is there any model in that nature paper you showed?
Yeah.
So what did they say about the very fast?
This paper treats photon echo spectroscopy, two photon echo spectroscopy, and they say the always stretching frequency changes within 50 femtoseconds. Means the local environment changes very short time scales.
So they didn't show any models that.
Yes, maybe.
Any other question? If nothing, let's go to the next talk. Thank you very much.